So I didn't want to let you know that. I know I had some folks that asked if I could, if they couldn't make it. So tonight, first of all, a couple things about ground rules. Today, right now we have about 56 people on, which is great. The goal tonight is to really provide an opportunity for you to share some feedback based on the facilities presentation that I did on Monday night, or any questions that maybe you have as a follow-up. What I'd ask is everybody would be muted, and if you would like to share something, just raise your hand, and you can do that by basically if you click on the reactions underneath, as soon as you click on that at the bottom of your screen, there's the ability to raise your hand, and then I can call on you and you can unmute. That way we're not having everyone talk at the same time. So what I'll do is open it up, by just saying, obviously you saw some of the ideas that we shared. And I shared on Monday night about the renovation of LPS and then the possibility of a 5-8 building, or, some of the other options of what I presented before as far as, remaining a pre-K 6 and then at LPS, and then a new building for West Amwell, which has some challenges as far as being able to find additional room in Lambertville, but some of the different options that I posed on the table. So I'm going to kind of open it up, and you guys can ask questions or provide feedback or input or thoughts on different ideas you have. So the floor is open. Rebecca, go ahead, you can unmute.
Okay, Rebecca Smith-Casey from West Amwell. So I have sort of a couple of questions in thinking through feedback. I guess my first thing is I tend to be pretty empirically based. I like data. I like sort of knowing where everybody stands and also where the research stands. And so in looking through kind of research on 5 to 8 schools, the overwhelming majority of like the empirical research seems to suggest that school districts are moving away from those 5 to 8 standalone schools and transitioning back to K to 8 schools because it has better outcomes for kids in the long term. And so I guess my first question is, why are we not considering building a new K to 8 school and then having room to expand at the high school into the rooms that are currently being utilized by the 7th and 8th grade students, thereby solving some of the South dilemma, and then all of the kids in the district have access to a new school? And then I think my other question is, have we considered sort of surveying the residents and the parents about what is most important in a new school district? Because it seems like there's a small vocal group of people that have a preference for one thing, and then another group of people who are sort of saying, I don't care where you put the school, I just want it to be the best school possible if I'm going to be paying for it for the next 30 years. And so I just wanted to kind of get a sense of whether or not the feedback is very reactionary, which is what it feels like right now, or whether there's been sort of some survey that some of us haven't seen that's kind of collecting data on what the collective district feels is best for everyone in our community as a whole across all 3 sending districts.
So I'll answer the second part first. There has not been a survey. As far as why are we where we are right now? Well, here's been my takeaways. And if I've misread it, feel free to jump in. From all my, feedback meetings, from all my meetings that I've had, feedback meetings, meetings like this, small group meetings, board meetings, I've kind of had some takeaways. And the takeaways is that for a segment of our community, it's really important to have a school in Lambertville. For a segment of our community, a combined school in Lambertville, including West Amwell residents and Lambertville residents, wasn't something that was feasible or enticing or appealing. So from there, I weigh out and say, all right, well, what are some things we agreed upon and what are some things that we haven't agreed upon? Well, I think we all agreed upon that we need to do something with our facilities, and it's long overdue, and we can't keep pushing this down the road. There's been a lot that we've disagreed on. So from there, I came up with the idea of, all right, could we truly try to look and get creative with LPS with a full renovation? And then the only way really to create additional space, besides the possibility of doing an addition in the front, is also to maybe look at grade configurations. And that's why, honestly, out of everything that I pushed on Monday night and shared, I felt like what made the most sense was a K4 and then a 5.8. In that model, everyone would be able to experience a new building, so not just one community or another. And it kind of gives each community not everything they want, but something along the lines that they want. Obviously, if we go down the road of the K8, that takes the building probably obviously out of Lambertville. So how will that play out? Quite honestly, a K8 is going to be expensive. So, and I'll share probably a little bit more at the March 22nd meeting, but you're probably looking somewhere around $38 to $40 million for a K8 school. So as you know, based on what's been proposed before, that's over what we've talked about. And I know you haven't seen the numbers yet for, maybe a K4 and then a 5.8 and kind of what that looks like. But I know that when I presented two separate schools at one time, we were at like 36 million.
And then
so that would be even more than kind of what we are. And I showed what the implications of that would be on the taxpayer. So that's one of the things, but that's a challenge. Obviously a spot for a K8 too would have to be identified, whether it would be on the property that we're talking about for the 5.8, meaning on our existing property at the middle school, high school, or would it have to be somewhere else, and where would that be? So that's kind of where I am as far as my decision making and how I've gotten to this point. I realized going into it, there's two sides of this, and I'm just being straight up 100% transparent. There's the 100%, and I wish I could say to you that, you know what, I'm going to propose the 110% most educationally sound plan. And that's great and dandy, but if that's not going to pass in the community, it's going to waste everybody's time. So, and then the reality is we've got to do something with these facilities. So I'm trying to come up with some creative plans, and we're also very unique because we're small. So a lot of times when you look at typical districts and what their school sizes are, they're a lot different than what we are right now because of our smaller enrollment. So I'm trying to come up with an idea where a good portion of our community can wrap their head around it and say, all right, this could work for us and we could support this moving forward. And that's kind of where I am right now. But I'm open to other ideas and other thoughts, but I know that some of those other ideas and other thoughts have been shared will not be embraced by certain segments of the community. So that's, and I know I'm not going to be able to make everybody happy, but at the end of the day, I do think that if we have a plan that our school community, meaning parents in our district, can't get behind, we're going to have a heck of a time having folks in our communities that don't have kids in our schools get behind. So that's important. You have to think about that going into it. If your goal is to put all this effort in and to pass a referendum, those are all things you got to think about. Madeline.
Hi, Superintendent. Thank you. One question I had is, in all of this, has there been any consideration of looking holistically throughout the whole district? So obviously there are a lot of options and challenges with the elementary situation and facilities, but I know that there's also some needs at the high school as well. And frankly, it's incredibly cheap to borrow money right now. Has there been a consideration to expanding the scope beyond just the immediate facility needs at the elementary level to also incorporate future planning for the high school as well?
Honestly, I think that what we could do is we did a pre-K4 and then a 5.8. That would solve our space issues at the high school, because now we're taking the 7th and the 8th grade out of the high school. At the same time, I feel strongly that we could utilize our capital reserve, utilize on an annual basis for projects to really try to attack some areas of the high school and some programming things and some modifications to spaces that we may want to do and do that over the next 3 to 4 years. And honestly, by doing that, that would kind of be right in line with our elementary projects. So when the elementary projects were complete, we would be in a good position at the high school level as well. I don't necessarily think we have to include that in the referendum because I think it will drive up the cost. I think we have to think about, I know interest rates are low, but we have to think of the impact on the taxpayer. And if there's a way that we can do it with our capital reserves, and when I mean capital reserves, it means that within our budget, we allocate, like, so for example, if we need paving done or roofs done or work in a classroom, or we need to replace, all the whiteboards in an entire building or the track that we did and things like that, we could kind of pick off projects on an annual basis and get ourselves in a good spot.
Thanks.
Matt Larkin?
Hello, Superintendent Suozo. I live in Lambertville and I have two students, one in the 8th grade and one in LPS 6th grade. So we'll all be at South. First, I want to say I really appreciate your effort in meeting with people and looking at different plans. It really makes me feel that, you're making a real effort to come up with something that people like. I think the best compromise is one where everybody's a little bit unhappy. So I agree with you. At the end of the day, something has to get passed by the voters. But having been a Lambertville resident and I had a year where I was the stay-at-home parent, I do have to say that, a community school is worth so much that, you can't say 2 more teachers is better because of what happens there. So I definitely love the idea of a walking school. And I think that's really valuable and important. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Jen Batford.
Hi, could you maybe, now I do have a question, but I have to comment on what was just said, and maybe you could help me understand what exactly the people of Lambertville would possibly have to be upset about this when you're saying that this is a compromise where everybody would be a little unhappy. I'm a little unclear on that because I really think that this plan supersedes any other goal other than keeping the privilege and luxury of a walkable school within Lambertville. And let's be honest, it's not true that people in Lambertville are taking some sort of a hit, but fine. My question though is, what this renovation of Lambertville Public School, does it take that school into the future? Does it provide additional space for growth? Is it going to still fix the library, the music room, all of these other things that we've been told for years have made it so that it doesn't make sense to renovate that building? Because I gotta tell you, I'm getting a little worked up here because I feel bullied and gaslit on this entire conversation, being told one thing out of the one side of some people's mouth for years about the possibility of renovating that building, to now suddenly that's a great compromise for everyone. I don't understand that. You're adding an additional transition of schools to a small school district that doesn't exist today and telling me that that's a compromise. It's not a compromise. I'm failing to understand why you are so convinced also that this is the only option that could possibly pass a referendum. I think that's completely unfair to a large segment of the people of this district. I'm sorry. So this renovation of Lambertville, that's this awesome compromise, and that's going to make everybody so happy. You mean to tell me 10 years down the road, we're not going to grow out of that school? A kindergarten through 4th grade school really makes an impact? That's going to help our district? I don't understand it. I'm really struggling to understand it.
I'm sorry that, it's gotten you that upset. That's not my intention. I'm just trying to make something work, Jen, at the end of the day. And it may come down to where it goes out. And if it doesn't pass, then we're back to square one and we're looking at another option. So, that's really all I can say about that. I'm trying to get, I could easily just say, it is what it is and we roll it out. If we don't have support, it loses and it goes down. And at the end of the day, the only thing that gets hurt is our kids because now they're in now.
Hope you wash your hands.
I'm trying to kind of work with that the best I can. I mean, I will show you if you know, if you care to see. I'm going to pull up something just to kind of give you an idea of some of the ideas that we talked about with Lambertville. So right now, this is the setup. So let's say if this was a K4 building, what would happen is more than likely is that we absolutely would be able to go down to 3 sections. So in theory, what you would have is, let's say 3 classrooms for 4th grade, 3 classrooms for 3rd, 3, and I know the building's set up differently now, but kind of work with me. 3 for 2nd, 3 for 1st, 2 sections here for kindergarten, and 1 section here for kindergarten. And then what that does is kind of free up additional classroom space, and we can kind of configure that however we want. What we would also do is then in here, if we added an addition in the front, we would look to redo the main entrance, build a new media library center in here with hopefully like a maker space. And we probably would take the existing media center here and turn it into a music room. And then in here,
I don't want to leave it off, leaving it on. I'm just turning down the
in
volume.
this
That's fine,
space.
but
I don't need to see that. I know that.
I want to hear it.
Everybody can mute, please.
I understand it. It's too loud.
And then utilize some of the extra classroom space. And then we still have a lot of small student group spaces that we could utilize for like special education, small group instruction, art, or other things that we might, you know, consider as far as building in the plan. So that's just kind of like a quick overview. You know, as far as the K-8 goes, like, Jen, I guess my question to you is, I mean, what are your thoughts about that price tag? Is that going to pass?
I would like to know what the numbers shake out to be compared against maintaining
40
3
million.
district
Yeah.
facilities going forward. Because I understand that there's an upfront cost to this. There was always going to be an upfront cost to this. But I feel like we're not talking about the long term here. We're a small school district. We're talking about now renovating a building that's only going to serve a portion of the kids. Another small portion of the kids get a new school building. And that's it. That's as far as we're going to go. And I'm struggling to understand why we can't, we're not, it's not that I don't understand. I know why we're not doing it, why we're not pursuing an option for a K-8. It, you know, we've been, I guess, overrun with this concept of we have to have the school in Lambertville, and that's going to overshadow every single other option. It's always going to be there. So you know, I guess I'm on a losing battle. But yes, to your point, yeah, I understand that it would be a more expensive upfront cost. I'd love to know in the future that we are set for growth. We're providing more students with a new building, and we only have to maintain 2 facilities. Balance that out for me. I don't know. Maybe it's okay to spend that money up front because we get it in returns in the long run. We're not getting our kids to have to transition 2 times, 2 different buildings, which we don't do today. Delaware Township, K-8, East Amwell, K-8. There's some other good options that people that live around here can just send their kids to those schools through the choice program. So yeah, I feel like looking for the future, I got it. I know it's an expensive endeavor, but for the future, doesn't it make sense? I mean, when people come and move into a township or move into an area like this, right? People that don't have kids yet, but are planning families, or people that move in that have small kids, what are they going to look for? They're going to look for the elementary school. You're going to be over here downtown for these few years, and then you're going to be over here for these few years, and then you get to the high school. Maybe it would be a better, more, you know, a better option for the future that you have a nice, strong, you know, 21st century K-8 building. And like you said, you still free up the capital, you free up space at the high school. I'm just a little upset that it's just being, you know, thrown out, that it's, you know, price tag and all this other stuff. But
Well,
I could be on my own here.
I'm not throwing it out. I'm going to dig into it, and I'll have research on it. I know that there's been, you know, some social media presence about it. So I have every intention of investigating it and see how much it exactly would be. And sharing that information with the community, no doubt. I'm definitely not going to just sweep it aside. That's not my intention here.
Well, thank you.
All All right. Anybody else? And then we'll get back to maybe some folks who had a chance to speak already. Anyone else who hasn't spoken that maybe wants to share?
Tony, hey, is it okay if I go?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Steve. How you doing?
Sorry, I missed the beginning. I don't want to be redundant. I was telling some other people, one of my students is on Jeopardy tonight. Like one of my former students is on Jeopardy. So I was a little late to the meeting. It's a little exciting, but so I'm taping it anyway. But so I guess speaking as a teacher, I'm not covering this. I really like, as a building block, the idea and theory, unless someone can tell me a bad thing about the pre-K at the high school. I think you've got something there, right? It's not facilities, but look, as a coach of when I inherited an ice hockey team my first year, I was told that by the athletic director that 5 of the kids in the team were the 10 worst out of the 10 worst kids in the school. From the athletic director, this is what he said. And I really needed to do some SEL with these kids. And I sat down this team and I brought them into a first grade class and they did art projects about winter. And I really think that if you offer this at the high school, it should be open to all of the kids, even on a quarterly basis. So maybe an art class goes in there once a quarter and they interact with the and then the pre-K kids, when they get to 7th grade or whatever grade, maybe 9th grade, depending on the facilities, right? Their first memories were shaped there, and now they're returning to a place that hopefully has really good memories. So I think you've got something there, and I'm really intrigued by it. And I'm totally willing to listen to someone who says that it's wrong, but I'm really intrigued there. And then on the LPS renovation, would that spot, would it be multiple levels?
No.
Could it be multiple levels?
No, it would be the same it is now.
Okay. So the new spot in between there where the sign is in the entrance, that couldn't be 2 or 3 levels?
No, probably we wouldn't, to try to keep costs down. Maybe, we would try to match it up obviously to the existing building, but right now in our initial conversations, we haven't talked about anything more than a single level.
Okay. Thank you, Tony.
Yep. All right, back to Madeline again.
Hi, thank you. I guess I just wanted to share one quick thing and then ask a question. I'm not on social media at this point, so I don't understand all of the sort of frenzy that's happened on there around this. I can just share my viewpoint that, I am one of those young families that moved to Lambertville because of the walkable school district. And I have a young child that will be in the school system in a couple of years. And, it's something that I value and would love to maintain here, but also not at the point of, throwing all sort of fact and logic to the wind either. So I guess to that point, while I would love to see a solution that allows, that part of the school district that can walk to the school to be able to do that, are there other solutions that have been explored, like maybe a full campus, like super school style at the high school site, where, all the facilities are sort of on the same campus, though, of course, having, appropriate separation for ages and things like that. Is that something that the school district has looked into or contemplated as a potential solution here?
They have in the past, before me, quite honestly. There was a plan at one time to bring all the elementary students to the high school and actually build an addition off of the side of the high school for a new elementary school. I think from at least what I gather, and if I'm inaccurate, let me know, but it was met with some resistance and didn't go as well as far as support. So that was looked at one time. But obviously, if we decided to go down the road of, let's say, a K-8, we probably would consider looking on the high school site, first possibility to see, if that was viable since we own the land.
Okay, that's helpful. And, I don't think that there's going to be any proposal that isn't met with resistance. And I appreciate all the work that folks are doing. And I think that it's important that we really try to get to a solution that works best for sort of the diversity of needs in our district. And that's no small task, but I do hope that people are willing to keep an open mind and consider different ideas as you're putting them forward.
Thank you. Shara, go ahead. We haven't heard from you yet.
Hi, thanks for doing this. I just wanted to say two things. The first is just because, and there's no science behind this, but I don't really know many people who attended a 5 through 8 middle school, but I did. And it was configured so that 5th and 6th grade were on the first floor and 7th and 8th were on the second floor. And there was no problem with it. So I think that what you came up with in terms of the K4, 5, 8 is a really creative solution to the, the question of the facilities. And I also just, it's a little bit of a reaction, but I am a Lambertville resident and, have been seeing some stuff on social media. And, it was just referred to that we're a group of elite people who are, digging our heels in over a walk-in district. And I mean, first I will say, yeah, it's really important to me that a school is in Lambertville, but I also want to point out that when we look at our community, there are a lot of people who either don't drive or there's a family that has one car. And that's a real issue because if you live in Lambertville, you don't have to be able to drive. And that's reality for a lot of people. If we build a school that's not in Lambertville, then families and even students will miss out on a lot of school events like back to school night or concerts or, I know the library has done really cool, reading events. And that's a real concern that I have, I haven't seen many people actually address as a problem of access and equity. Thanks.
Thank you. Erica?
Hi there, how are you?
Hi, Erica.
Hi Shara. I know that a lot of people in Lambertville don't have cars and don't drive. I know a lot of them pay each other to drive each other's children to and from school and to different activities like sports and whatever. But I have to say this part. I see parents that live on Cottage Hill, which is across 29 from the school. I see them driving their kids to school, passing by families that are walking their children to school. And if you've never crossed 29 right there, it's a nightmare. 518 goes up the hill, Rocktown Lambertville Road goes up the other way. You have that strip mall with like some apartments up top that has contractors going in and out getting breakfast at that deli. You have the traffic light that backs up, turning onto Bridge Street, and a gas station there. And then you also have Swan Street and that little feeder street that cuts through, I forget the name of it. It's Franklin Street, I think, but it's a nightmare. So I see every day parents trying to cross the street by Nicola's and then also further up 179 towards West Amwell School, where it's like a blind curve when you're coming up from Nicola's to that point, and it's where York Street would be in line with 179. There's been multiple times where I've come around that corner in a school bus and there's a mom like playing Frogger with her kids trying to cross the road to get her kids to Lambertville School. I think, in my opinion, those parents would choose to have their children bused to school. If I were in their position, I would not want to be walking in the ice and the snow and the rain and everything else to try to get my kids to school if there was a bus available. So while I understand that it's, a community thing and you meet people and the kids can play on the playground and everything like that, maybe there's something else that can be done with that property to maintain that, or redistrict some of those kids to go to West Amwell School. But it makes me sick to think of someone getting hit on 179 or right on 29 right there, trying to get their kids to school. So I just wanted to add that in there because that hasn't been said, and everyone's speaking on behalf of these people that don't have cars, but I actually watch them every morning try to get their kids to school.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mike, go ahead. You haven't spoke yet.
Thanks, Mr. Soto. So thank you for being so open and transparent in this process. It does help quite a bit. One thing I always focus on is how people who don't have kids in the school are going to react to any of these proposals. So, you know, you said in the January update that renovating either school really was not great educationally or physically. You know, since then you've seen those options weren't working. You're now considering what, you know, I would call a somewhat lesser option. It doesn't look educationally as good, and also maybe isn't as physically conservative as other options in the long haul. My question is, how are you going to convince voters that don't have kids in the school that this is worthwhile? So how are you going to convince them to spend tens of millions to get a suboptimal educational solution?
Mike, honestly, I got to get out there with people, right? So right now, you know, COVID's been a challenge, but even beyond that, I think until we solidify a plan and what we're going to go out to referendum on, then that's my job from that point forward, to meet with anyone who's willing to meet with me, and whether it's Elks, Legion, whatever it is. And the hope would be, as we get into the spring here, things are going to open up a bit as far as COVID goes. That's my job really from, you know, April, May until November, to get out and try to share with people all the facts and the situation we're in and how this could be a viable plan.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. I will say, though, you're in a bit of a catch-22 that without the costs, both CapEx and OpEx, it's really hard for people to evaluate. So until and unless we have those numbers, it's hard to really figure out where you stand with these things.
Sure, and I will have the numbers by our March 22nd meeting, so I'll be able to share all that information. And quite honestly, I'm going to look to get numbers on the K-8 too. I mean, that, you know, obviously that's been brought up. So I want to, you know, do my due diligence and really dig into kind of what that would cost and what it would look like, and realize we're trying to get as creative as we possibly can right now on all different options. Tomorrow morning, I have a meeting at 9 a.m. with a company that does modular construction with our architect to get an idea of, you know, would we save money, whatever we do. With a new facility, if we went down the road of a modular construction compared to a traditional on-site. So we're going to look at every option possible in order to, you know, get a quality product, and obviously an educationally sound product, and then also a fiscally responsible product.
Thanks.
Yep. Go ahead, Dave.
Hey, Superintendent Dave Dolnick, just want to say thank you for having these sessions and letting us talk about this. And if I were you, I'd probably have a flask next to me. So I give you a lot of credit to take this feedback. So I have an 8 and 12-year-old in West Amwell. I've actually lived in Lambertville for 7 years in the city, right across the street from Bell's, and 8 years now in West Amwell. So what drew me to the area was actually Lambertville. Great small town community, made a lot of great friends, still have a lot of great friends down there. And I also graduated from Pennsbury, so graduated with 900 students, right? So one of the things that keeps me in this area is the school, right? And it was actually kind of funny when we moved out of Lambertville and my wife took me to see West Amwell. I told her I don't want to move because honestly, it looks like a third world country school. But when I went in there and saw how warm it was, what teachers do, I mean, what a great area. What a great school, right? So I guess just the one thing I want to bring up is, right, I am totally, as I said, when I first moved to West Amwell, we need a new school. So I'm all for a new school. I'm all for a new school for both areas. But I do think we have to look at it from a regional perspective. We have to look at it from a cost perspective. I think Mike brought up like a complete picture from a CapEx, from what it's going to cost to actually build it, and then all of the costs for operating in the years out. And with that full picture, I think from parents, you can make a good decision, and also from the community, you can. So all I just ask is whatever we do, and it sounds like you are getting those numbers together, is that we present it in that one, in that manner as capital operating costs over that 30-year period, one that will help individuals that don't have children in the school, right, make a decision. They could see that there are potentially some operating costs savings in doing schools. But I think that is really important for us to see. And like I said, regionally, we have to do this in the smartest way possible with the best education, right? We all don't want our taxes to go up, right? And if we're going to go up, it has to be a good investment, and it shouldn't be just for, something that you want to hold on to. It needs to be a decision that's made for the best of the district as a region, right? So just comments and nothing else, I guess, free to answer. Just want to say thanks, and that's it.
Thanks, Dave. Matt, go ahead. Your hand's up again. Matt, do you want to say anything again, or all right, now your hand's down. All right. Is there anybody else? Crystal.
Actually, it's Brian again. How are you?
Okay.
I'm on her computer.
Oh,
So
that's okay.
one thing that I just wanted to mention that obviously that Becky talked about first was maybe some sort of, even if it's a small survey, again, I thought that was a good idea to highlight what are the main focuses that people are looking for in the schools. Obviously, this is about the infrastructure and how the safety of the buildings and stuff like that. So to me, if we're looking at the future and to what Jen said, the education and the safety of the children, you don't have to answer this as a question, but where does walking to school have anything to do with the facilities and the education and safety of the kids? To Erica's point, crossing a bunch of streets, 10, 12 streets to get to school with 1 or 2 crossing guards along the way, or being picked up by a bus and driven safely to the door. That, I think, is more of a priority. I went to Lambertville, graduated from Lambertville, went to South, graduated there. I don't think my experience would have been any different walking to school. The West Ammo kids aren't walking to school. That has nothing to do with it. They turn out great, whatever you want to call it, socially, whatever. The South kids, which they all will be, they're not walking to school. So to use that as why you want Lambertville to be there has nothing to do with the education and safety or socially how the kids are going to turn out. I just think all the focus is on that and not actually about the education and, again, safety of the kids. So I think a bunch of people made some great points towards that. But everybody seems to be talking about that one thing that I don't hear anything else or any other thing why it's not a good idea other than what we like. And that's why we moved to town, because we can walk to school. Well, there's a lot of things in life I want that change all the time that I don't get. So it's about the kids, again, maybe like I think it was Erica said, something can be done with the space. If it isn't a school, that it's a community center or something like that down the line, who knows? But I don't think that's the overall goal, is being able to walk to school. That's my thing. That's why I think, maybe that survey idea, just a few pinpoint questions that we can all answer that's sent out to the whole school district, something like that. Again, nothing that you need to answer, just kind of 2 cents to throw out there. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Michaela.
Hi there. How are you
Hi.
tonight? And
I'm good.
good. Thanks for hanging in there with us. As always, I'm incredibly grateful to the level of attention you're giving this and the willingness that you have to be open. I have to admit, as a product of West Amwell and a product of South Hunterdon, and a very proud mom who moved back here specifically for the school district, I'm a little disappointed in my district. I'm disappointed in the alleged code ethics violations. I'm disappointed in the red herrings being thrown about, the name calling, all of the distractions that Brian was just talking about. We are here, and according to the school board and the district's mission, to promote the educational betterment and aptitude of our kids. I still have yet to hear, the questions have been asked, what is the best model upon which you build a school district? If you have a 9 through 12 high school, what do you do down below? We don't have that information presented to us yet. And in my world, that's where we start. If we want to achieve the highest level of excellence, that's where we start with the best models. And we work backwards and we find what we can do to satisfy that vision. I'm super disappointed because we're not seeking that best outcome. What we're seeking is some strange amalgamation that's been created by certain board members and certain philosophies that want to hold on to a belief. And I'm all about that. Hang on to that belief. I love those feelings. I helped pick the Wildcat as our mascot at West Amwell. I do not want to let that go. But in the interest of my kids and their experience, we have to start thinking differently and about the students of today and the students of tomorrow, not the community members who purchased real estate in a place, and respectfully, that is going to change and evolve. That is the only constant in life, is that change happens. So if I can have someone explain to me the academic value of a walking school, you will get my 110% support. But I have yet to hear that. I don't know why that academic value is aligned in their minds to this walking school. But I moved to West Amwell because I wanted small class sizes. I'm losing that by combining schools. I'm okay with that because I believe in the value of betterment that we will get from this new school. Where it goes, I don't quite frankly care. What I care about is that it serves my kids today and the kids of the people who will be buying property next to me, next to you, and continuing this wonderful community that we all say we love and want to see prosper. So let's really hone in on the academic value of the things that are driving us. Let's figure out a way to get beyond the politics of the things going on the board right now to make sure that we're seeking the very best option for our kids, not the best option for the opinions of the people in place today. That's really it. I don't have any real questions other than, can we see the results of the best educational models to build a school district? What is that? What is that? You know, to Rebecca's point, what's the empirical data there? What can we really dig our teeth into? Because once you get out of my mom feelings, my parent feelings, and talk to my neighbors who don't have kids, we have to compel them. And if it's not driven by data, if it's driven by how people feel, we're going to have a really hard time getting this to pass. And that is all.
Thank you. And here's what I'll say about your question about the empirical data. I think it depends where you look. I'm just being honest with you. You're going to find things out there that are going to support a K-8. You're going to find things out there that are going to support a K-5. You're going to find things out there that support a K-6. You're going to find things out there that support a 6-8. It really depends on where you look. And I know because I've looked. And obviously,
I hear you.
Yeah.
I totally get that. Believe me, you want to go Google anything, go into any search, you'll find what you're looking for. I promise.
Yeah.
But what I'm asking is, what is our best bet? Not, and Tony, I'm talking to you. What is your best bet? Not based on the facilities we have today, not based on the opinions we have today, but what do you really think? If you had a magic wand, what would you do? And that's where I want to start, because I trust you. I have seen you work under duress, under crazy intense situations before you're even fully, brought on board. You have devoted yourself to us, and I trust you for that. So I want to know what you think. What, in your experience, in your research, and in your learning, what is the best model upon which you build a district? And then let's help you, because there's obviously a lot of really educated, motivated people here. Let's help you figure that out, because if we're in this for the kids, that's where we start.
Gotcha. And what I'll say is, and please realize, like, all these ideas that are being proposed, they're not coming from the board, they're coming from me. And honestly, as I transitioned,
Come on, Chad. Come on, Rain.
As I transitioned into the district and I really researched the district, and then obviously got on the, started in July 1 and started touring facilities and getting an idea. I did think coming in, a combined school, and at that time I said Lambertville would make the most educational sense, and also the fiscal responsibilities of obviously saving the district money. But obviously I know that wasn't supported for a variety of different reasons, and that's kind of where we are now. So that kind of answers your question there. I know one other thing I did want to share is that, and I'll get into more detail with this at our March meeting, but as you are aware, we did have a demographic study done, and that started back in early January. So I actually did receive the results of the demographic study last evening. And based what that looks like, it shares our projections over the next 5 years of what our enrollment would look like. So in theory, year 4 would be 24, 25. And that in theory, if all went well, would be probably the first year where we would be dealing with, a new configuration, new facilities, whatever we decide to do. So here's what I'll tell you about that. And I can even show you a slide on it, a little sneak preview. Number one, the demographers are predicting that our enrollment will be reduced. So right now we are at about 861 students, I think. Now, granted, we did lose some students because of COVID and homeschooling. So there is a chance, and that was all given to the demographer. But the projections right now for years moving forward, when we look at 24, 25, and 25, 26, we're looking at probably somewhere in between, based on a 5-year statistical analysis or a 6-year, somewhere around 791 to a little over 800. So when you look at, for example, and I know somebody just put in the chat, it might have been Sarah, like, what do our sizes look like? And what would they look like? I'm going to show you that right now. So if we did have, let's say, and you can look at this from a K-8 side things or from a K-4 or 5-8. But basically, this is what it looks like. So here's what the demographer is projecting our enrollment would look like for 24, 25. And that's what our class sizes would be if we went with a reduction in one section. So right now, we have 4 sections, 2 in each building, pretty much for each grade level. And we have 3 in West Amwell for 5th grade because there's a bit of a bubble. But this is what the demographer is saying our numbers will look like in 24, 25, and then what our numbers would look like 5, 6, 7, and 8 in our class sizes. Now, what you'll notice is in this projection, you'll see 3 sections for 5th and 6th grade, and then you'll see 4 sections, and our numbers even lower. The reason why you'll see 4 is that typically, from my experience, I really do like to see content specialists in 7th and 8th grade. So in other words, 1 math teacher, 1 science, 1 social studies, 1 language arts, rather than having 1 teacher, which often happens at the elementary, teaching multiple classes. So maybe they're teaching social studies and language arts, or maybe they're teaching math and science. By the time you get to 7th and 8th grade, you really do want to be content specific. And then you can kind of get an idea here what the numbers look like for 9-12. And that includes the pre-K students. And then the, let's see if I could just rearrange my screen here. One second. All right. So that, I mean, that's what the demographer is saying. Now, when this is based on a 5-year statistical analysis, the next tab over is a 6-year. It's a little bit higher. I think our total student population of high school is like 303 students, and then we went up a little bit in each grade level. So that kind of gives you an idea of what our enrollment is projected to look like. Right now we have in LPS grades K to 6 or pre-K to 6, we have 225 students. So this would be like another, I think, around 37 students extra with the combine, just as a possibility. But then you could also see if, let's say we were a K-8, you can see what our numbers would look like as well. So I'll get into this more and I'll make the report available. It's 60 something pages long, but kind of that just gives you an idea of right now from the demographer side of things, what they're projecting our enrollment to be at the time when this would. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I have a little bit of a different type of question, and I've been wondering it for some time. All the points that, sorry, that's the truck. All the points that were made tonight at the other, Zoom meetings that you held, they're really good points for, all different sides. How is this info getting to the board, right? Because they have the benefit of hearing the public comment on the Board of Ed meetings, which, depending on the topic, people adhere to the topics or they don't, but they're not on these meetings. And I know you're going to do your best to share it and summarize it, but it does concern me a little bit since they are making the decision that they don't have the benefit of hearing all of these good thoughts from the community at all the different points in time when they're thinking about the proposal that you submit to them and thinking about all the options.
So Janelle, I am recording this, so I will be making that available to not only the board, but also the community.
And does the board actually listen to all of this, like every minute of it? Because I just,
Well, up to this minute, I have not recorded, but starting with this one, I am recording, and then I will moving forward. So I give the board a summary of each time. I mean, I've only had the one, honestly, from the last proposal, so I didn't have more than that. And now, I have tonight, which will be recorded, and then I'm doing Tuesday night next week, which will be recorded. So I did give them a summary of kind of the first time that we had the meeting. Obviously, the choices at that point were different than they are now. But now I'll have the ability not only to share it with the board, but also to share it with the community. So if folks were not on the, able to join tonight, we have right now 79 folks that are on this. Obviously, anyone could go and look at it at any time, and I'll post it on the website as well under the, hopefully you've found it already, but with our new website design, there is a referendum icon on the homepage that if you click on it, it has all the presentations I've done so far.
thank you. I think we really need to encourage the board to hear a lot of the community comments firsthand. I don't know if it's possible for them to be on some of these calls, but thank you.
Thank you. Renee.
Hi there, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks for doing this. Super helpful. I think my question is around when you're looking at the population growth piece, which obviously, you're showing us 5-6 years from now, but has there been much looking into thinking beyond that? So I'm not sure how privy you are to discussions around affordable housing builds that may or may not happen in at least our two towns. I don't know much about what's going on at Lambertville at this point, but I know that in West Amwell, there could potentially be a pretty large build that happens somewhere down the line. Of course, nothing's guaranteed, but if it were to happen, it would probably jack things up pretty high. And what that would look like in, if we renovated LPS and kept that K through 4, how much space would you actually have for growth, for a real growth that may happen?
Yeah, so the demographer does take that into account. So that was all information that was shared. I know he makes comments on that in the report based on what he found in Lambertville that's on the horizon and anything in West Amwell. He does reach out to the planning offices and you'll see that that's noted. So that is taken into account. Obviously, this only goes out 5 years. I don't think we're looking at anything right now where obviously we would be anywhere near a build in that amount of time. But he does make note of it in his report of kind of what right now is on the horizon to absolutely happen compared to maybe potentially.
And for the, and I know you're still working on some of the stuff and maybe it's to come later, but for a reno in Lambertville, do you have any projections on what that building could actually fit with the renovation?
Not yet. I will have that once we kind of scope, because honestly, we really be doing a redesign of the building. So, we would right now, based on the beginning, putting an addition in the front, we would be adding on about an additional close to 7,000 square feet, which would be added to the total square foot. But I'll have more information on that as we get closer to our March meeting.
Okay, thank
you. Let's see. Anybody?
There are some people in the chat who have indicated.
I haven't looked at the chat. Let me look at the chat.
Sorry. Thanks.
My kids are up. I was wondering if the numbers for Kate. All right, so I answered that one already. That was about the numbers I just shared from the. Curious if the demographers broke those projections out by township. I don't believe that they did. Although they do talk about the total population in each town and what that will look like moving forward. But again, I did receive that last night at about 10 o'clock and it is about 63 pages long. So I'm still kind of breaking it out, but I did want to definitely hit on the enrollment pieces for tonight. I'm trying to raise my hand, but do not have a button. So would like to speak at some point. All right, Denise will let you know. Denise, can you unmute yourself?
Oh, yes, sure. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Denise Baylog from West Amwell. We did and do have 3 children in the district. One graduated last year, one's in 11th grade, one's currently in 7th grade. So any of these discussions and decisions that are being made, for the future, obviously won't impact our family, but, certainly we have a lot of friends in the school districts that, it's, as taxpayers in the district, we do have a vested interest in everything that's moving forward and do want what's best for the children of our community. So I have a couple of questions and comments. So if I could take it in pieces, just so you're not bombarded with everything.
Sure.
So great. My first question is, I know in the January meeting slide deck, you had a couple of bullets throughout the deck that talked about NJ, Department of Education, and state funding. So I just wanted to clarify that when you use those terms, you were using them interchangeably, or did that mean 2 separate entities that were providing funding for either renovations or the building of new construction?
No, it's only one. It's only one entity, and that would be the Department of Education.
Okay, great. Okay, so then my next question is, in the January 21st meeting, it looked like on slide 31 and 2, you made a very, very strong argument of the reasons why we should not renovate the buildings. A very strong argument. And I know that tonight you clarified that we're trying to, make everyone happy and make sure that, we move forward with a plan that's going to pass by the taxpayers and the voters. But it also looked like on slide 35 in that January presentation, for the building of, at that point in time, you mentioned they did not feel the best approach would be to renovate and to build 2 separate buildings, 2 separate schools, but rather build a combined school. And the state at that point would provide funding for $3.5 million. I think it was quoted at, they would reimburse at $143 per square foot. So at that time, we would be getting $3.5 million. But now in the February 22nd meeting on slide 8, we have renovation of LPS, say that would cost us $10 million. We would actually have financial support from the NJDOE of $4 million and no state aid for the construction of a new building. So I guess I would like to understand, why did all of a sudden the money increase, or all along are these hypothetical numbers? I'm just trying to understand. I don't know why it would increase when it seems that renovation is really not the optimal way to proceed, and we would actually get more money for that, when previously a month ago we felt that that was not the best approach.
Sure. So here's the reality. The state gives more money for renovation than they do for new. So the formula that they use for a renovation is literally 40% of the cost of the renovation. And that's why I gave the number of, if it was 10 million and we got 40%, we would get 4 million from the state. For new construction, typically, the number they use is, they use $143 a square foot, which is different. And also, if you know anything about construction, it costs a heck of a lot more to build than $143 a square foot. Probably costs closer to $350 or $400 a square foot. So when we went the first time and met with the state on November 11th and had the conversation, at that point, we had talked about really closing both schools. So we made the argument that because we have, in theory, by closing both schools, unhoused students, and that's a key factor for the state, that they, we had to convince them to provide us some funding. So what they said is, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Basically, if you take a look at the math, a combined school that you're talking about would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 62,000 square feet. So we're going to take that number and we're going to use $143 a square foot, and then take 40% of that. And then I break it down on that slide. And that's how they came up with the 3.5 million. Now, in our scenario that we're in now, and when we just met with them about a week ago, what they said was, we'll give you the 40% on the renovation of Lambertville. Now, That does not include any additional square footage of Lambertville. It only includes the renovation. For your other building, if you look at the size of your district, right, and you kind of look at the size of your high school and your middle school, or high school and then the 7th and 8th grade that are a part of the high school, which are considered our quasi middle school, it doesn't really justify another building as far as funding goes. Because even though from our perspective, we feel like we're tapped out as far as space right now at the high school, because we have the 7th and the 8th graders, the state doesn't look at that way. What they do is they basically look at the total square footage of the building, the total now number of students, and they come up with a formula to say, you have plenty of room or you don't have enough room. They don't take into account how you're using your classrooms, your setup, your programs. They don't even look at that. It's just a quick square footage versus number of students. So from their perspective, they kind of came back and said, you have enough room right now. Now I understand what you're trying to do. And you say that you're going to expand program at the high school and you want to look to modify spaces. That's all great. But based on the numbers that you have right now of your enrollment in that building and the square footage of that building, it wouldn't qualify you for any additional aid. And that's the way they justify it. So that's the reason where we are right now. And that's why I put that, last Monday night in my slide, that we would get that 40% for the renovation of LPS. We would not get anything, for the additional square footage at LPS or anything for, the 5-8 building. We tried to make our best case scenario and push them on that and kind of use some creative logic around it. But quite honestly, when it comes to the state, they're very black and white. The numbers are the numbers, and there's not really an area to convince one way or another. Even if we could get $1 million or $2 million out of it, we were trying to, but unfortunately we were unsuccessful.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. That's quite interesting. It sounds like they need to come up to speed with the inflation of what it is to build a new.
Well, that number,
new
by the way,
construction,
just for everyone's reference, the last time that number was changed, the one, I believe, was in 2002.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, then they need to reevaluate that. And I don't know, on the lines of if we do have enough square footage at the middle school and high school, then maybe we need to do some serious reevaluation of how all of our spaces are being used and look at that very critically. So again, thank you for clarifying that. My next comment is, I honestly do not, I'm sad to see that, Lambertville and West Amwell are at such odds for feelings of where everything should be. I don't, I'm making that statement, certainly not everybody falls into one bucket or the other. Personally, our family, we would be supportive of a school anywhere where it makes sense, educationally as well as financially. So if it could fit in Lambertville, that's great. It's a wonderful little town, and that would be absolutely amazing if we could build a school in Lambertville. But if it does not make sense educationally and financially, then by all means, we need to look at a school in West Amwell. I did write you a letter last month. It was not communicated to all board members, so it was not part of official, it was correspondence. It was not official communication, I guess, to the board. Yeah, for the record. But I am a product of a school district, the Whitehall Copley School District in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania area, of all of the schools being on one campus. At the time that I went there, it was 3 different school districts. Or 3 different schools. It was K through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12. And it was an amazing experience. I can honestly say that there are so many advantages to the all schools on one campus approach. You have sharing of all of the resources, everything that you have available, sharing of technology, sharing of the special ed teachers, the support staff, facilities, maintenance. You can go back and forth very easily from building to building, efficiency of the bus runs. We also, we walked to a place, we have a wooded area on, the high school site. We had that similar area on our campus where, we actually had outdoor classes in the woods. It was called The World. We would actually take a field trip to the world and have classes in these woods. We walked across to the high school. At the time we had a planetarium. You know, it since then has been renovated, but it was great. We had science class at the high school building, a field trip to go to the planetarium. We also took, you know, and I know our school doesn't have a pool, but we actually took gym classes. We'd walk across to the high school, and we'd have swimming class in middle school. So we could actually, you know, just have a different type of activity. So, I mean, the benefits of having all the schools on one campus, I think, are endless. Anybody who is, you know, you can look it up if you're familiar with Saquon Barkley. He went to that school, so he went to my high school. Anyway, so little tidbit there. But so I'm really supportive of that type of approach. We also had our track and field days. We used all of the facilities. You know, you could use all of the fields. We went to the track and field to have our field day annually. I mean, it just was great. It was a great community. You can have a lot of programs between the high schoolers and, you know, the younger age children. So, you know, again, I'm very supportive of that. I'm a product of it. I didn't feel any, you know, I thought it was great to go to the 3 different schools. Now they actually have 5 different schools on the campus. So it's pretty amazing. And then my last comment that I'd like to make will be just the general concern I have in moving forward and how this gets voted upon by the current board. And I'm going to use an example, whether it be right or wrong, but I'd like to use Jim Gallagher as an example. He's currently on the board. He was formerly board president. And I would just like to say that he has been a very ethical and really should serve as a role model for all of the other board members in how you should be looking at decision making, because he comes from Stockton, as you know, and the last thing I think he was born and raised in Stockton, or most of his life spent there. 3 children went through the Stockton school. The last thing he ever wanted to happen was to see that Stockton school close. But we regionalized, and him as a, you know, he's serving as a board member and also as the president of the board, had to look at what was best for the regionalized school district. And what was best was for not to keep that school open, but rather to close that school. That is the last thing. I know for a fact that is the last thing he ever wanted to happen, but he voted based on what he knew was best for the regionalized school district. We voted to be regionalized. We need to move ahead and look at that. And I would encourage all of the board members to take some lessons from Jim Gallagher, look at how ethical he is, and he serves as an incredible role model. And he should be, you know, he should be commended for what he's done in the past. So that would be, you know, my last statement. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thanks, Denise. Maren, go ahead. We haven't heard from you yet.
Hi, it's Sean, actually.
Oh, hi, Sean.
Hey, me again. So I wanted to first echo Michaela's statements earlier. The tenor of the conversation has certainly taken a downturn recently. Like someone else said, it, you know, a good compromise leaves everyone pissed. It's the mission behind this is that we get the best education for all the kids in the district. If we had $100 million to throw at this problem, this wouldn't be as difficult. Everyone could get what they wanted. For the reality of getting a referendum passed, it has to be done in a cost-conscious way. For any of the plans that have been put out in the last several months, you know, my daughter would be seeing a year at a new school or a renovated school at the most before she goes to South. So it's not, my interest isn't to be privileged and elitist and demand that we get our way. If I saw compelling educational outcome evidence that having a school in a K-8 setting in whatever location that would be the guiding force behind this. To get a referendum passed, however, that takes the school out of Lambertville, to the best of my knowledge, and Mr. Souza, please correct me if this has been done at this point, when there was a groundswell of opposition to closing the school based on the board plans that were presented about 2 or 3 years ago, we asked for a economic impact study about what would happen with Lambertville if the school district or the school were to be closed and centralized onto a different location. I haven't seen anything about that yet. So until there's some compelling evidence that it wouldn't be an existential threat to the community we chose to live in, to close that school. It's tough to ask people to vote against their own livelihood. I get that people are upset that there are people in Lambertville who want to keep the school in a walkable setting. It's valuable to a lot of people. It's not a vocal small group. The voting results from the last Board of Ed election from Lambertville were a 2-to-1 majority in favor of a candidate who wanted to keep the school in Lambertville. So if the education outcome and the price tag are the issue, then let's do that. Let's make the best choice for what the kids need going forward. But to ask that comes at the expense of the community, that's the majority voting block and the majority tax base for the district, that's a tall order to ask. That's my opinion. It's not the opinion of anyone else. I don't presume to speak on anyone else's behalf. And I think the best way forward through this is for people to be heard and to make the choice that does the most good for the most people, knowing full well that there's going to be people who are not happy with every detail of the plan. But the idea that, I believe you're tasked with is to find a way to get the community to approve education as a public service and towards the good of the community. We endorse public education because we want a functioning civil society, and not having every detail of the plan you want in place doesn't seem like a reasonable thing to base voting down a referendum for, in my opinion.
Thanks, Sean. Ellen, go ahead.
Great, thank you so much. I have a few notes here, so please bear with me as my eyes bounce back and forth. I am in favor of what is most valuable for our children educationally wise. I have the benefit of living in Lambertville and having my daughter go to LPS, but as a substitute teacher, I get to work up at West Amwell. And just seeing the conditions that both the schools are in, this cannot get kicked down the road any further. The fact that this started back when my son was, I believe, in kindergarten, and now he's in high school, we would have been much better prepared technology-wise, and the air filtration or whatever was necessary for COVID, if this didn't get kicked down the road as long as it has. And I do, I understand and I hear people talk about the walkable school district, but when this started, I believe there was a demographic study that showed the population declining, as evident with our 4th grade class that I can only speak to because of my daughter. And that there was also a study that only 25% of the children in Lambertville actually walked to school. And I know that I drove my daughter to school, and I'm sure in COVID age, the drop-off line had improved with the staggered drop-offs. But I was there and it was so unsafe. I took my daughter early just because it was so crowded. But I do understand that people like to congregate, get together, share stories about what's going on in the kids' lives or whatever, but there's options. And I understand that not some people in our district do have access to cars. So if our school district or the school does get moved up to West Amwell, Aren't there other options? Aren't there, community hours that could be set, community business hours? There's talk about the Jesus School being an option to hold our kids for if there's a renovation at LPS. Could Jesus School be used as a business office for administrators or teachers to have, business hours there for those once or twice a month for those parents who can't get up to school, shuttles, or even have the bus stop at the playground. Let parents congregate while they're waiting for their bus for their kids to get picked up and dropped off. There's other options. But what I do know is that our facilities cannot go on any longer than they are. My 4th grade daughter does not have heat in her classroom. The one classroom I work in has connectivity issues with the internet. I mean, how much longer are we going to put our children, serve them this way? We're doing a complete disservice to them. So I really hope that people put their feelings aside and can do what's best financially and fiscally for our students. And I'm not sure that building on a flood zone and spending $10 to $20 million is the best option. But if that's what it is, if we have to renovate LPS, does that mean they will give us 40% if you go down to the bare walls? Because I don't see any other options at LPS other than completely gutting that inside of that place. And then if you do, and you have to find a place to house our students during the construction, do you need to go by that formula for the square footage per number of students to find the proper housing for them for those 2 or 3 years that it takes to construct? Because I know Jesus School certainly does not have that square footage. So it's just that, there's those different options out there. But I think all of our kids need to be together for the most educationally sound education for them. So thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. We'll go back to Rebecca, who started us off, I think.
I did, and I'm so thankful to be able to talk again. I want to ask a question and also speak to a point raised by Mr. Lewis from Lambertville. We are a regional school district. We are unfortunately tasked with making a major decision related to our children in the midst of a global pandemic. And as a trauma specialist, I recognize that we are all in the tenuous position of trying to wrest control of an uncontrollable world in the midst of a pandemic. And so tensions certainly do run high. However, we are a regional school district. And I think that it is inherently difficult as a regional school district to say that the needs of one community outweigh the others, particularly when the argument is not an educational or an academic argument. It is not necessarily a tax argument. It is saying, I will not vote for the best choice for the children in the district in which I live because my property value may decline by not having a 50-year-old school in my town that theoretically I could walk to. And as a person who lives in West Amwell, who went to Lambertville School, who went to West Amwell School, who went to South Hunterdon, I find it extremely difficult to say that the needs of one community outweigh the needs of the children of all 3 communities that send to our district. And so I just wanted to make that comment. My question also hinges sort of on the Jesus School option. I have been in that building within the last few years. That building is nowhere near ADA compliant. It is a cramped space. It is a small space. How is it realistic that if we were to renovate LPS, that we would be putting children in a school that is basically the same age as LPS and has had no updates made to it in that time period? Does that then require costs for things to be retrofitted to make that a usable school for 2 or 3 years? for the kids that would be housed there while renovations are taking place? And I guess as an aside to that, has any thought been given to doing the flip and saying, let's demo West Amwell School, build our new combined school on that property that we already own, putting the playground over top of a septic, because we can play over top of a septic field. We can't build on top of a septic field. And then doing something else with the LPS property.
So to answer your first question, I don't know. I'll let you know because I'm visiting and touring the Jesus School on Monday afternoon. So I'll have a better handle on that. The other thing I will tell you is the goal would be if we decided to go down the road of a renovation of LPS, we don't anticipate it taking 2 to 3 years. The hope would be it would be one full school year where we would do a full school year summer with the goal to be back in the following September. So we're looking at right now, based on the renovation, that it would be one school year to complete. So I'll have a better idea after Monday of kind of, I have not been in the building. I have spoken to folks who have, and I'll have a better idea of kind of what type of potential, or if they're even interested, which we've not had that conversation yet. So I don't want to speak on behalf of them. We would even need to have that conversation. And then your second part, no, we have not at this point. There hasn't been any discussions about demolishing, the West Amwell School and then building a new combined on that site.
And then insofar as the Jesus School, does the consideration that it is a religious school factor into the decision in any way, as the fact that we are a public school district, then housing kids in a school that definitely has religious icons throughout the building? So are there any concerns related to that or the implications of that for a variety of reasons?
I would hope not, just because of the reason why we're using it. Other districts have done that. But obviously if parents had concerns, I'd be willing to listen. I haven't heard any as of yet, but. Jamie, we haven't heard from you yet.
Hi, Tony. It's actually Lindsay. Hi, how are you?
Okay. That's okay.
I don't have anything deeply profound or anything to say, but I just do have a point and kind of a question to ask. Again, just being a substitute teacher, I do go to Lambertville Public School some days, and I deeply love it there. The teachers, the children, the staff, everyone is super supportive and amazing. So it really is a great school. But I do just want to share a concern about the parking. I know you had mentioned that if we do reconstruct the school, we will be adding square footage possibly onto the front. Where would there be parking? And just to share a personal experience that I had a couple of weeks ago, I drove to the school I tried to be 10 minutes early. I could not find parking because of the snow. I mean, there was nothing, to the point that I called the administrative, the front desk. They're so helpful. I was almost in tears. And they honestly encouraged me. They're like, it's okay if you're late, we'll cover you. Just drive around the town basically until you can find a spot. I continued to do that because it was a Wednesday morning, and one of the amazing police officers there at the school, he was there to help me. And I said, I'm afraid to park in one of the zones because of the Sweet Street. I was like, I've had a ticket there before as a sub because there was no parking. Can you help me find a parking spot? And he actually helped direct me. And he was like, listen, this is such a problem. We know if you can find something, let's try to get your car into this little snow zoned area. Because my understanding is a lot of the community members, because they don't have enough parking spots on the streets, will go and use whatever is available even at the school. So that's just a personal experience. I just wanted to bring that as a concern. Again, love the staff, everybody there. I just think it's something that should seriously be considered, especially when you're talking about possible expansion and community events and that sort of thing. So that was my point.
Yeah, I mean, definitely something we got to take into consideration. I mean, we've looked at from the staffing side, based on the amount of staff we would lose compared to what we would gain by combining schools. And when I say lose, I mean staff that would, if we did go with the 5-8 model, that would move out. And then if preschool moved out as well, it would be real close to being a wash. And then you're talking an additional, right now, if you look at the demographer, about 37 students. So, but yeah, I mean, we'd have to take a look at that design in the front and kind of how we could, and beyond that, the one parking lot obviously needs to be fixed. Even with the limited amount of spots right now, that is not in good condition. All right, Shannon.
Color a picture of yourself. I just was wondering, is the idea of the combined school in Lambertville completely off the table? I'm hearing from a lot of people that they are on board with the idea of a combined school. They're not opposed to it. So I'm just wondering why we're totally like brushing that off now after just a few complaints about and concerns about will it work at the January board meeting.
Yeah, it was more than that. So like beyond the meeting, I had been meeting with a lot of small groups of folks. And quite honestly, I mean, I heard loud and clear, I had a lot of neighbors too in that area, whether it was, Delaware, Jefferson, or North Franklin, that had some major concerns about supporting it. So honestly, I started to get concerned where, if I didn't have, I know there was going to be a segment of the community that maybe was concerned about a lot of different things with that site. And then even within the community concerned about it, that really calls for pause. And that was one of the reasons why I made the decision to kind of go in a different direction. I mean, honestly, and I think I mentioned this before, I literally, after that first Zoom meeting that I had, sat down that night and made a T-chart and kind of came up with what everybody kind of was in agreement with and what all the disagreements were. And I just felt like at that particular point, it was worth going in another direction. Because what I don't want to do is waste everybody's time, right? And I don't want to, put in 6 months of effort with the community and all the stuff that goes into a referendum, knowing that maybe we're going to bring something to the table that doesn't have a chance to pass. Because again, and I think people have said it on the call tonight, at the end of the day, the only one who's going to suffer if that happens is our kids, because then there's another year where we're in the same situation that we are now. Keep in mind, November, if we go out, obviously we don't have to pay for a referendum. So if the referendum was unsuccessful in November and we decide to go back out again anytime before the following November, that would be an additional cost of anywhere, around $30,000, maybe even more to the board to put a referendum on. So those are kind of all things, like if we're going to go out, I'm trying to go out with something that really does have a chance. And obviously I know that there's a lot of legwork that still needs to be done, tons of legwork with folks that aren't on this call and folks that don't have kids in the, in our schools. But, I just don't want to go through the motion of just to do it. I want to really have a chance for it to survive and be supported. And I realized, someone mentioned it before, the challenges of, we're in a tough time right now. I mean, it's COVID, right? And we've to a certain extent have forgotten about that a little bit over the last month or so with some of the conversations that have gone on in the community, in social media and things along those lines, as far as the facility conversation. But we are in a tough spot, and there's still a lot of folks that are recovering and people that have had economic hardships, and I get all that. So it's a balance, right? Because the tough part of all of this is that, and I've said this many times, even if it passes, we're not going to reap the benefits for several years down the road. So it'd be so nice if it passed and then within a year we reap the benefits, right? But we're not. So, conversations I've had, well, why don't you just wait a year until, well, then we're 5 years out or 4 years out. So that's where it makes it tough. So anyway.
I appreciate all of that. And I mean, I live like a block from where the new building would be built if it was built on that spot in the football field. So I understand the concerns. I just wonder if we would be better served by maybe troubleshooting the concerns in that spot than coming up with all these other new ideas. Because if we could feasibly build a combined building there, it seems like it would be the benefits that the West Amwell people want educationally and the walkability that the Lambertville families also want. So just my thoughts. Thanks.
Thanks. And I do think, and I will say, like, my takeaway as I'm writing down notes here tonight is, honestly, I think that was a good suggestion in the beginning. I do think we need to do a survey. I think I need to collect some data and try to do the best I possibly can, not just to do, and I got to figure out how to do this, but not just electronically, because I do think there is portions of our population that aren't on social media, that aren't in to the Zoom world, everything else. So if I just send out, a Survey Monkey or something along those lines, I'm going to get a certain level of feedback, but I got to really think creatively of how I can pound the pavement to get as much feedback as I can from all the communities, and just to kind of have some data to look at and say, hey, so we have a better idea. So, let's see. Is there anyone else who hasn't had a chance who's got their hand up? Ooh.
Can I speak?
Yes, yeah.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. So I have an incoming kid into kindergarten this coming year, but I also
Sure.
had an older kid who went to LPS a few years ago. One of the previous commentators talked about the walkability statistic of 25% in Lambertville, currently going to LPS. However, just thinking of Latino population, I wonder how many of those would actually find the West Amwell site accessible. I mean, I imagine now that the West Amwell Primary School has like virtually zero accessibility for walking. I mean, otherwise you get hit on 179. So I'm just wondering about that. Also, I think, demographically, really the larger town sort of has to control decision making just because it's democracy. It's just the numbers count. Just saying it, just putting it out there.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point, and that is something we have to consider, because like I know there's been a lot of conversations about the walking benefits and all that. I also don't want to forget about, we do have a large Spanish-speaking population in Lambertville. I know, obviously, since my transition into the district, I've tried to engage that portion of our community in a variety of creative ways. And there is some challenges with that. And one of the things that has crossed my mind is that making sure that we're engaging that portion of the community. If that portion of the community doesn't have means of transportation, we want to obviously make sure that they're engaged in our educational process and the education for their kids. What impact would it have if the school wasn't there for that segment of our community? Obviously, if they can walk to the building, if they couldn't walk to the building, is that going to be detrimental to them as far as being able to be engaged with with not only just their own children's education, but all the other community things that go along with the school, right? Events, back to school nights, PTO events, things along those lines that maybe could create a barrier. And I'm not sure if it would, but it's something that I have to consider too, as we talk about equity and things along those lines. I see, Sarah, just the actual difference. I don't have the actual numbers off the top of my head. I can get it. Obviously, we have a much more higher population of ESL students, or English language learners at Lambertville than we do at West Amwell. But I can track that number down. All right, let me see who else. I'll just say PAS iPad Pro. I'm not sure where that is, but.
Oh, Paul Stevens, Lambertville Superintendent. Yep, thank you. Yeah, just building on your idea of the survey, some of us don't have kids. I don't have any kids that go to any public schools. Well, to any schools, I don't have kids. Anyway, when you go out for doing this survey, I know you'd like to get my input as well as anybody else's. How will I make sure that I know when that's happening and can provide my input?
I would utilize the Lambertville listserv if you're on that, hopefully.
I'm not on that, but what are you going to post it on the not the redevelopment site, but the referendum site?
Yeah, I would do it everywhere. So it would be on our Facebook pages for each of the schools, the district website. I would utilize Lambertville's listservs. I would utilize West Amwell's community Facebook page. As many places as I could. I'm still concerned though, I'm not going to hit a segment of the population that just isn't in tune with that. So I have to figure that out of whether it's in person, and I don't know if there's in-person meetings that are even happening in places like Legions and Elks. And at this point, or if they would be willing to meet, if I got the word out somehow, even if I had meetings at, our high school and they could come and, or at LPS, and even fill out a survey, like a paper survey, if they want, didn't want to do the electronic. So I got to think about
Well, actually, you could, as part of the community, you could, Fisherman's Mark might be a good place to
Yeah, that's
publicize.
another, yep, Paul, you're right. That's a good resource. I'm going to write that down.
Okay. So anyway, thanks for the opportunity to provide feedback. I've done it at other times. I mean, I'm one of the reasons you're recording this right now. I was the one that suggested you record.
That's right.
So,
I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, good idea.
All
Thank you.
right. Let's see if I have anyone else who hasn't had a chance yet. And let me check is there any questions in the chat? One more year of delay before the referendum. We're putting it. Yeah, I mean, I kind of talked about that, like some of the implications if we delayed it a year, and then obviously we're going to turn the clock forward as far as when, when we would have some type of changes to our facilities. All right, we'll go back to, Andrea Little, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I am a West Amwell Township resident, but have two boys up at the high school that went through West Amwell Elementary. I'd like to kind of go back to when we started regionalization, because I actually was on the West Amwell School Board at that time. And the focus at that time, just for anyone that may not have been living here or, had concerns at the time, but the idea was to really pull together as a community at a time where, we were sharing so many of our facilities, our teachers, our superintendent, our business administrator. So we had done everything at that point as two different school boards working together to do what we thought we could do best for the region at the time of the district. So by doing the regionalization, the idea was really primarily on an elementary level on how do we tie all three schools to be on the same curriculum to bring everybody to the right place together to coexist in 7th grade going to the middle school. And costs were a big issue. Costs were going up. Insurance was ridiculously high. And that was a real fundamental reason. It was curriculum. It was 21st century learning. We were talking about this 10 years ago on creating a space or facilities creatively with a very small budget. We spend a lot of money per student to be educated in our district. We're small. That was a big concern when I moved here, was how is this sustainable? And one of it was regionalization and, sharing these costs together, whether it was books, bringing up, at the time, Lambertville to be, someone had mentioned technology. We actually are one of the best schools on having technology in our district. I commend our district because during COVID, we were able to go right to school. Many districts could not do that. So I commend our district for being ready in place, whether, with tablets and, everyone trying to get on board. So kudos to our district on that. But I think we just need to get back to the whole point of cost efficiencies, but bringing the best education to our kids. And that really is bringing them together. Whether it is a school in Lambertville or whether it is a school in the other district, that's the most important thing. But what I would like to also touch base on is that there's been a lot of chatter about that Lambertville school building. Now, at the time of regionalization, we at the time were all looking at what was our capital of our buildings. So we owned West Amwell, We knew we owned South, but we didn't own Lambertville. The Lambertville school, I believe, and that's something I'd like you to research just to make sure so there's no misconceptions there, that the Lambertville school was basically deeded to the district to be used as a school. But if it's not being used as a school, it goes back to the family. That was always my understanding at the time. So I think that needs to be clarified on when people are talking about, oh, we could use it for other things. I'm not necessarily sure how that works. So I just wanted to put that out there to you. I really support doing a survey. And if it takes a little bit more time to get that, I think that the community at large should really be a part of it. And perhaps it even is a postal mailing that heads people to a survey, and you put it out there to the Lambertville Library. And that becomes, let's all join together to get that out in our communities and get people to put their opinion out there. I think that's really good. And I think I really commend so many of the conversations tonight. I learned a lot from people on the point of views. I think it was really civil. And I think on, whatever anybody wanted, it was really, really positive. But I really took note of what Erica Baverance talked about and all the kids crossing to get over to Lambertville and the dangers. So we really need to be looking at that. People aren't even driving right now and, commuting, and, people are running across that highway. And that's not going to get better. If anything, it's going to get worse as congestion happens. And our numbers are going down. So we really need to be looking at that. And we need to build a school for our district, our students that are here, and give them the benefits of really a fantastic facility. Like, I'll vote for a new school and my kids will be long gone, right? Hopefully in college at the time. But I'm going to vote for a school that's not a box, that's not just classrooms. I want something that's exceptional. And that, I think, takes a little bit of time. So I appreciate the conversation tonight. Those are just things I would think about. And thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Terry.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm from West Amwell. I'm also work at LPS as a para, and I have 5 children. My oldest is now 30, and she graduated from South. They've all graduated from South. At the time when I was starting this endeavor, I was concerned because I could not get anyone to give me a positive report about our school district. And, it's quite a while ago. And we went with South Hunterdon anyway. And my children have done exceedingly beyond my expectations in the best schools, Syracuse University being one, top of their class in math, sciences, English. People told us that we would be better off doing private school. Sorry.
That's all right.
And oh gosh, I'm double sorry.
Sorry, I have a few of those too. Don't worry.
Anyway, this is reality. But anyway, my youngest is in 7th grade, and he's doing very well considering the conditions that they're having to learn in now. But I mean, I couldn't be more pleased with the way our school district has functioned in spite of what we have as far as facilities. We definitely need new facilities, there's no doubt. My question is, are we looking at other districts as a model, or I know that we're unique because we're probably the smallest in New Jersey. Are we looking at other districts as far as models, as far as K through 8 or 5 through 8 and the different solutions? Are we looking or comparing, or I don't know?
Yeah, I mean, to answer that question, yes. So I'm fortunate that I, have a round with our county superintendent twice a month, and I have the opportunity to have a lot of conversations or even offline conversations. And we're fortunate where we are surrounded, where we have districts that have a lot of different unique setups. So as mentioned before, we have several K-8s. We have, Flemington Raritan, who has a K4, a 5, and then a separate 5-6, and then, a separate 7-8. you know, a lot of different configurations. So I have been having conversations with folks just about the pros and cons and, you know, kind of what that looks like and their thoughts and their experiences too, because they've been not just there, but other places and, you know, what that looked like compared to where they came from. And so all that information trying to gather as much as I can.
Well, as far as history goes here, I mean, I couldn't be happier with the teachers that we have and the administrators, because we've made out very well and we couldn't be more pleased. So in spite of facilities, but yes, it's time for new facilities for sure. So
Thanks,
thank
Terry.
you.
Mike, you have your hand up again?
Yes, I do. I just have a couple points I wanted to make.
Go ahead.
I think there's a little misunderstanding on the parking situation. From my perspective, I don't think of it in terms of teachers, but in terms of school events.
Yep.
If you go with a district K through 4, you're adding 70-ish students, it seems, if my math is right. You know, you currently can't really support the current population parking, so they overflow. If you're suddenly doing district-wide and there's an event, either a play or whatever, you know, Lambertville is going to be impacted and everyone is going to have severe problems. I also would want to know what the busing plan is going to be, given how tight everything is. You're basically taking more congregation space outside away by filling in the courtyard. So the buses would be jammed right up against the building almost, as would any drop-off parents. So, you know, it sounds to me like the drop-off situation would become materially worse. That's the one point. The other point I want to just make is that the Save LPS website makes a mistake in how far south is from Lambertville. They claim it's over 8 miles away. It's actually 3.5 miles away. So while I understand people's concerned about driving, we're not talking about gigantic differences. We're talking about a 5 or 6 minute car ride, and carpooling and other options are available. And where I grew up, I think you would hear a lot of laughter about someone complaining about 3 miles. It's a pittance compared to many other regions. And I understand Lambertville's concerns on this, but we do have to be realistic. And to Brian Lawton's point of view, you know, I think we all have to act as a district and not just over focus on this one issue.
Thanks, Mike. Michaela?
Me again. So again, thank you for sitting in 1 hour and 48 minutes into this. You've been quite a champ.
And I didn't realize it was that long.
Sorry, I probably shouldn't have told you. But you know, I'm sitting here watching you, and you are taking all of this in, and you're taking notes, and you're taking actionable steps on it, and that is super applaudable. It's really incredible to watch, because you don't really have to do that. You know, we have to move forward on this. Our district does not have the time or space to let this go through another referendum or another election and not have the referendum go through. So you're doing all the right things. So I have heard these great suggestions about, you know, the different people in our community that we have to reach with the survey. That, you know, great idea, Rebecca. Way to follow through with that. On this call tonight, you have people who are dedicated and committed and willing. And I really encourage all of us to not just show up to the meetings, to not just raise our hand and speak our opinions, but let's help be a part of this. So I ask you, how can we support the process, right? Like, how can we help you with this survey? Who do we need to reach out to say, hey, are you aware of this conversation? Because if I feel as strongly as I do, and the folks on the other side of the table feel as strongly as they do, we all have to compromise and come together. So I really, really implore the community to, you know, lead by example. Let's show our kids, the kids that we are trying to continue to increase educational and social benefit for. Let's show them how that's done. That means coming together, exploring options, and making sure that our voices are heard. So however I can help you, please let me know. And I really thank you and the community. I love the different opinions. It's so inspiring to see people get excited, because I love this community. I have every passion in the world for it. So I think we all need to take a breath, and say, hey, how can we help? So Superintendent Sozo, how can we help? And I think we kind of just have to leave it at that. Like, let's get involved. Let's grab our neighbors. Let's get them involved, because when we're a participant in the situation, we will buy in. And that's all.
Thank you. Well said.
My pleasure.
Jamie again?
Yeah, hey Anthony, this is Jamie actually.
Okay.
On the same MacBook here, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, but anyway, definitely want to echo the thanks for just putting this together, just being available for all the feedback that everybody's giving. I just wanted to make a quick observation for myself, because I think that it's important, and I think that it's something that I'm sure you probably even noticed as well, and maybe most folks do on this call also. And I don't mean this as a dig. I don't mean this as any way to call an entire section of people out. In fact, I don't think that it's the entire section of folks. But I just noticed that tonight specifically, the whole tenor and temperature of the conversation was much more civilized, much more regimented, kind of cool-headed. I think really getting to issues, key things. I love what Michaela just said, like, hey, listen, how can we be a part of the, the solution? Like, what can we do to help to get the word out? But there still was some pretty passionate things, but I think that they were said very, very controllably. And I just noticed that a lot of the folks that are on this call happen to be West Amwell folks. Just an observation. Again, not a dig at all towards generally the Lambertville folks. I have a lot of friends there, but I just thought that was a very interesting, just kind of phenomenon, quote unquote, we'll call it. Anyway, that's just a comment. But my question is regarding the facilities. So I echo Jen Batchelor's comment earlier, how she was talking about just kind of the progression and some of the history of some of these things that have been brought up in the past, and how for a long time it was always said that the Lambertville school couldn't be renovated. When you originally brought the initial proposal to the table, that couldn't be renovated. West Amwell couldn't be renovated. Obviously, the backlash ensued. Then we come back to the table. Okay, now we can renovate, but we still can't renovate West Amwell. Now we still got to look for a building there. And so kind of here we are. And I think that the dilemma and kind of the corner that, and I don't envy your position, sir. I really don't. And I appreciate your leadership and appreciate everything that you're doing to just really hold yourself out open and hopefully to not only be, but continue to be held accountable by the community. But putting this out there that now all of a sudden renovations are possible on the Lambertville site, but not for West Amwell. So here, and I'm sorry, it's a little bit long-winded and a little bit disconnected, but hopefully I'll pull it all back together. So here's the way that I look at it. I think that it's absolutely viable that West Amwell School can be renovated. I don't think that, honestly, that's something that anyone can stand definitively on and say that absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is something that can never be, like, basically saying it's a condemned property, just, tear it down, what have you. I think that there should be considerable, I think there should be consideration to look into renovating that building, regardless of the additional offset cost of bringing in the, what do you call those things? The portables or the
relocatables. Yep.
Those things. Right. So whatever those offset costs are, fine. But I think that there certainly is still, I think that option should still be on the table, and specifically because you have all of the recompense that comes back from the state. I think you said it's something like 40% that they cover, or whatever the number is. So if we're thinking about this from a feasibility and just from a monetarily savings perspective, that's what it comes down to the taxpayers. So again, bringing this all kind of full perspective, I think that the way that this has been presented so far, you kind of put yourself in a little painted yourself into a little bit of a corner, because in the past it's been told Lambertville can't be renovated. Now all of a sudden, because there's backlash from the Lambertville community, oh, all of a sudden we want to renovate it. Now, West Amwell still can't be renovated, so we have to build. So that's a big cost, right? We don't get that offset from the state. So I find it interesting that you have two sites right now being occupied by public resources. These are non-tax revenue producing sites. They're complete draws on the taxpayers' pockets, right? All out of our wallets, the salaries, everything, the grounds. They don't produce anything. There's no addition to local GDP from a school district. Now, I'm a huge proponent of education. I think there's studies that say that for every dollar that you spend on education, $2 comes back in the future inevitably. But when we're looking at trying to be as efficient as possible, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Bottom line is what can get passed. What are the people in this district going to approve via the referendum? So I think that it's pretty clear that the people of Lambertville are Lambertville or bust. West Amwell is saying, I think pretty clear, we don't really care where it is, what makes the most financial sense, but still incorporates the educational needs of the school district. But if it's build a new school and renovate Lambertville, that's still a pretty expensive price tag. If we renovate both schools with the help of the offset from the state, that's probably the lowest price tag. But again, there's been this, back and forth and a little bit of ambivalence, from whomever that it can't be done, it can be done, it can't be done, it can be done. So I think that there's a little bit of mistrust in the public eye around all this back and forth around those aspects and how it was originally presented, and then coming back to something that was originally presented that they couldn't be. So there's this whole juxtaposition, I think, in the eye of the public. So anyway, that's just my point. And I think that considering also if Lambertville School were to be demolished or gotten rid of, done away with, and there was a combined school on a West Amwell site, certainly that would still have the least cost impact, because that's how you originally presented it, that a combined school is the most cost efficient way to do this. But the Lambertville folks won't, probably support that, probably would get voted down. Potentially, I don't know. But I do think that there's going to be economic benefit if you replace that site with some other, public, addition, some private business. I don't know how that works. I don't know what public land and how that becomes back into the fray, et cetera. So sorry, this is kind of all over the place, but bottom line is I think you need to really kind of dig deep. And I mean, this, you're not in the position that you're in because this is your first rodeo, obviously. But you really need to I think, seriously consider what's going to get passed. I do believe that a high price tag, no matter what, if it's build a new school and then renovate Lambertville, that's going to get shut down. People don't want to have their taxes increased. And then the people of Lambertville still be stuck with a school that, doesn't have a lot of, growth opportunities in the future. And then on the other side, a combined school in West Amwell, I don't think that's going to pass either. So either way you look at it, I think you're almost being forced into the decision of you got to go back and revisit potentially renovating West Amwell School and Lambertville School. So if they can both be done, I think that that's probably going to be the best way to do it. And I think that that is likely to be the best way to get this referendum passed. So that's just my 2 cents. So anyhow, I appreciate your time. Again, respect your position and your leadership. And that's all I've got here for tonight.
Thanks, Jamie. Well, then I'll just clarify too, because I know that's come up with a few folks. Well, they said to me, you were pretty adamant in your January meeting that LPS couldn't be renovated. And quite honestly, my rationale behind that was because we needed additional space. And honestly, the configuration that we had at that time didn't lend itself to that. The only way and I still feel this way, the only way that we can consider a renovation of LPS is if we do a different grade configuration, because that's how I'm going to gain space, right? I'm not going to gain space by keeping it the way it is, even with an addition in the front. That's still not enough. And to keep that building pre-K6, the only way I'm going to gain space to make a renovation worth it is we need to do a grade configuration where I can move out some grade levels and pick up some classroom space and then reconfigure that into spaces that we would need. So I do want to just kind of clarify that because I know that's came up a couple times. And then the other piece too is, kind of in our assessment, and it's not only mine, obviously engineers, architects, like the configuration of LPS is not good. The bones of the building are pretty good. We have some concerns about the bones of the building of West Amwell. So that's kind of why we've steered away from really digging into how we would try to renovate that building, just because of there is some concerns that when we talk about a full renovation, the cost could be a lot more than a renovation of Lambertville, just because of some of the infrastructure issues and the way that building was originally built. I will tell you that the LPS building, for what it's worth, was built well. Now, the way it was configured, not so much. But the West Amwell building wasn't really built real well when it was built. So that's challenges. All right, Crystal. Go ahead.
It's Brian
Oh,
again.
not Chris. I'm sorry. Is that?
Nope, it's not Crystal. It's Brian again. That's cool.
That's Brian.
First,
Yeah,
I want to apologize. First, I want to apologize because I've been clapping the whole time because I didn't see the raise your hand thing. So
Okay.
I want to apologize for clapping it every time somebody was starting to end their conversation. Two things. One comment to the gentleman a little while ago. It goes back to the whole regionalization and community aspect. And you're going to tell me that it's a democracy, that they have the numbers. So, well, that's who's going to win. That's not regionalization. That's not community. I'll leave it at that. The question I have for you, Mr. Suso, is what are the talks been about flooding? Again, I grew up in Lambertville, lived there for 25 years, moved away. Me and my wife were fortunate enough to get back so our kids could go to school here. We were a choice first. But Lambertville, when I was a kid, as it does now, floods all the time. And even with sports down there now. So what's being done about the whole flooding aspect? Because then you're going to have cleaning up after everything and the maintenance of that. So where are we at when the flooding discussion part of it?
So some of the changes that they made to the site, I believe after Irene and before Sandy, seem to have satisfied the issues with the LPS school. I know there's issues with the Ely, field site and the football field and things along those lines. And we were kind of starting to dig into that, honestly, when, we decided to kind of go in a different direction. We had been working with the DEP and then DOT to kind of really dig into what they did back in, I think it was 2012, May of 2012, when they did some significant renovations to the drainage in that area and kind of what it looks like. From there, it seems as though that had success with the school site. And some of the challenges, quite honestly, and I've experienced it myself since I've been here. When I came on in August, I was down at LPS on a Saturday night one night because there was an issue with a storm. And quite honestly, the drainage that was put in sometimes is not necessarily maintained. And that causes issues with flooding because it backs up.
Correct.
So there's been some discussions about whose responsibility is that? Is it the city of Lambertville? Is it the Department of Transportation? Who is it? But that's from what I gather, some of the issues there have been because of maintaining where the drains get clogged with debris and, really would need more of a ongoing process of how those are maintained on a weekly and daily basis.
Okay. Then the last thing I have to say is less than a month away. And I'll highlight the two first words I'm going to say. Lambertville West Amwell Youth Baseball Association is opening day is going to be happening in less than a month. There could be a spot for you to come and meet people, talk to people, social distance. So there's events that are around town, and that might be a good one that within the next month or so, baseball and softball are going to start, and there's the community coming together that, could be a spot where you could get some talk time and FaceTime.
Can you email me some details about that?
Sure. I'll talk to the president.
All right. Thank you.
You got it.
All right. Let's see where we're back to. Jen, go ahead.
Hey, sorry, just real quick. I know we're getting super late. I'm not sure if this was brought up already, so I do apologize. But if we have to go the route of temporarily relocating students for any renovation or new build, Does the hybrid model that we're currently using help that situation? And could that also factor in to the amount of space that you would need, where you maybe have half the kids on virtual learning, you know, half and half, kind of like what we're doing right now, knowing that it would be temporary anyway? And would that help alleviate some concerns on temporary relocation? I just wanted to throw that out there.
It's an interesting point. I mean, to answer your question, I'm not sure. That's probably something, once we get past COVID, that I would have to research a little with the DOE, just to kind of see what would be their stance on that, to allow us to do that. I mean, it's a creative solution that maybe cut down on the amount of space that we might need during the time where we were doing renovation construction. But at the end of the day, I think that I probably would have to go to the DOE to see whether or not that would be something that they would even support. Good suggestion, though. All right, so where are we? 9:07. Holy cow. So maybe we'll try to wrap it up in the next minute or two. Rebecca, do you have something you'd like to share?
I do. I have an idea on your survey.
Go ahead.
Let's throw it on some iPads and on some pieces of paper, get a voter list for all 3 communities. And I am sure I can rally enough parents on this call that we will go out and knock on doors for you to get the data, and throw us a couple of seniors who need to do some community service hours, and presto bango, we'll get everybody done probably in a month. And the same as Brian said, the opening day of the youth baseball, softball, couple of iPads at a table with some high school kids, helping older folks who don't have access to technology navigate how to do a Survey Monkey or whatever you need to do. And I will offer up my graduate coursework in stats to say, I'll run the numbers for you if you need it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Jamie? Or Jamie maybe had his hand up from before. Sorry. I'm just going to put everyone's hand down just to make sure that. All right. All right, so I guess we'll wrap up. I thank you. Obviously, this was a very productive conversation. I appreciate the discourse that we had, and all the different ideas that were shared. Obviously, again, if you have anything you think of afterwards or tomorrow or whenever it may be, shoot me an email. We can always set up something to talk more. As I said, this has been recorded, so I will be making available for the public. And then obviously I'll be having another one next Tuesday night at the same time. So if you know folks that maybe wanted to attend tonight, but unfortunately they were unable to, just remind them. I'll be sending out reminders as well. But I thank you. I appreciate it. And we'll obviously move forward and continue to move forward. And eventually we'll get to where we need to go. I'm convinced of it. So you all have a great evening, and we'll speak soon. Take care. Hmm.